I just got a job in an American company. I wanted to be a chief executive officer of a company. Years of running and chasing behind my career, I started reflecting deeply what's happening to my life. The thought which came into my mind was like I'm holding a Bible and preaching to a lot of people. I started becoming more spiritual. I experienced Jesus. I never wanted to be a priest. God calls you to priesthood or God's purpose. He will shut all the doors in before you, and He will just keep one door open, and you'll be able to only travel through that door. In my wildest dreams, I never thought I would become a priest ever. When I think about my life, from my childhood, I was sitting in my grandfather's shop and I was managing his business as well as I was continuing my studies. I finished my 10th standard, then I joined college because I got very less marks. I couldn't get into a regular college. At the same time, my dad had started his own shop. And in the shop, I started working in the day and I used to go to evening college. That is how I completed my graduation. So from childhood, I always had a passion to start something my own. And that was my desire. So after my graduation, I decided to do Masters in Business Administration so that I can have my own company and I can employ some people in my company. And that was my dream, and I was chasing for that. I passed as a best outgoing student, and that was a most memorable event in my life. Passing out from college, I never found a job. I started asking God this question. The other guys in my class started getting job. I never got a job. Why? At the same time, the shop which I built over 5 years along with my dad was in great debt. I didn't know what to do. Shop is in debt. I'm not getting a job. At the same time, my mom became extremely sick, and all these problems choked me, and I lost all hope. And I started questioning why so much pain in my life. Why so much sorrow in my life? Whatever step I take, why there is a failure? I didn't know what was the cause. I shared my struggle with one of my spiritual friends, and he said, well, if you want to know cause of your problem, you have to go to a prayer center. There you have to meet a spiritual counselor. When you pray with him, he will tell you what is the problem. Once you know your problem, you can come and solve it. And I found it's very interesting. And I decided to go to this prayer center. And that prayer center is Divine Retreat Center. It is one of the largest Catholic retreat center in the world. But with great difficulty, I went there. I started praying there. day one over, when it became day two, I couldn't pray anymore. I said, God, I can't sit in this place anymore. This is a very dangerous place because all the sins what I'd done in my life, it's coming before my eyes. I didn't know what to do. I thought of running away, and I went for the counselor, and we prayed, and the counselor said me one thing that was a big eye-opener for me. Then he said, you go and do a good confession and God will bless you. Taking his advice, I went for a confession. I made a detailed examination of my conscience and I did a good confession. And during that confession, I experienced Jesus. Till that date, I never experienced Jesus in my life. I was like any other Catholic teenager, used to go to church late, go there, come back, and do all kind of sins or other sinful things like any other teenager or youth would do. But that retreat changed my life. That confession was a turning point in my life, and I experienced God in my life. And I came back to Bangalore. Just after 3 days coming from retreat, I got my first job. And I felt it was one of the biggest miracles in my life because I struggled almost for 1 year to get a job. And I joined as an HR executive, and as well as I joined for an MBA to become a CEO. I continued my journey to be a CEO. I kept two things in my mind. That is, counselor said, you'll be successful in life provided you continued a spiritual journey. I started becoming more spiritual. I started attending youth prayer meetings, having a daily prayer life, and seeing my radical change in my spiritual life. Two of my cousin sisters were fascinated with my change, and they asked me, how come this kind of change happened in your life? I said, well, I went for a retreat, and after retreat, my life has changed. And they were curious and interested to attend the retreat where I attended. They asked me, can you join us? I said, well, I just got a job in an American company. I will never be able to get a 1 week leave. But they kept on pestering me, please come, please come. And just for casually, I just asked my manager, can you grant me 1 week leave? And he just granted. It was just again another miracle that I got a 1 week leave again. My intention was not to attend my second retreat, but to accompany them to have their retreat in Divine Retreat Center. And I reached there. I began my second retreat. Day 1 passed, day 2 passed. On the day 3, a priest came and started preaching. He preached like this: if God calls you to priesthood or God's purpose, He will shut all the doors in before you, and He will just keep one door open, and you'll be able to only travel in through that door. And after saying that statement, he uttered this verse: before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you born, I consecrated you, appointed you prophet to the nations. Jeremiah 1:5. When I heard this particular verse, it just shook me off, because the impact was, to express it verbally, if somebody throws a javelin spear to your chest, what will be the impact? That is the kind of impact I had when I heard. I became totally restless. I was not able to focus even for a minute on that retreat. Whatever the other preachers came and spoke to me made no sense, because only this one particular verse started coming into my mind. I didn't understand what is the meaning of this particular verse. You've been chosen as a prophet. I came back to Bangalore. After my retreat, I continued my job, but something different happened. Wherever I went, there was some problem happened in my company. Though I was able to speak well, do the work well, and what was required of me, I couldn't find a success in the company where I worked. I used to pray to God intensely, Lord, grant me success in this company where I work. But God was silent to all my prayers. I used to go to a bookstall, take a book, I'll get this verse. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. I'll close the book, keep it back. Then if I go to Sunday Mass, a church, I'll be attending a Mass, I'll get this verse from the mouth of a priest, the same verse. So wherever I went, many times I used to see the same verse again and again, and that chasing of that particular verse continued for 6 months. After 6 months, my brother's ordination came, and on the day of ordination, I saw the flex background was with this particular verse, with a big hand pointing with the same verse, Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I consecrated you, appointed you prophet to the nations. When I saw that particular verse, again, my heart started beating very rapidly. It was a very unique experience which I can't express in words. And that night when I went home, I accepted this verse. I just pondered on this verse. God has not called to me a computer scientist or a teacher or an accountant or any other profession. He has chosen me as a prophet. I will accept that. The day I accept that verse, this particular verse stopped chasing me. After 5 years of running and chasing behind my career, I started reflecting deeply what's happening to my life. And when I reflected, I felt like I'm running in a treadmill. I'm running, but I'm not reached anywhere. After 5 long years, again, I went to the retreat and attended the retreat. I didn't pray for any of my intentions. And the last day of the retreat, I approached one of the youth leaders there and shared my desire. I want to start a youth group in Bangalore. Could you just guide me? And she said, well, we are just starting a youth group in Bangalore from our center. You go and you help them. Once you learn how you can have the youth group, you start your own. I came back to Bangalore. I was part of this youth prayer group called Magnificat. And I started helping them. And as I started doing a lot of things in that youth group, one of the elder brothers said, hey Thomas, why can't you become a priest? You are not like any other youth. Why can't you become a priest? He asked me this question. It was like a big bomb which just dropped on my head. Like it was a very big shock for me. I didn't know how to respond to that question. And by that time, I was 27 years old. And I said, it's not possible because I'm already 27. I'm aged. And I have a lot of issues in my family. I cannot leave my family in that situation and can't step into priesthood. They said, well, you discern for yourself. From that day onwards, I decided to discern. As part of my discernment, I started spending time before the Eucharistic Lord every day. I joined seminary in the year 2011. My first challenge, how will I get up every day early morning? Second, all my brothers who are with me were 10 years younger to me. I was very senior. So my second challenge came, how will I survive with them with this age gap? And I continued my studies, and God gave me grace one after the other to survive with them in a friendly manner. I would definitely say it was only God's providence and God's grace enabled me to be in seminary for 11 long years. And one more challenge I encountered during my novitiate, the year which I feared the most, because in novitiate we cannot communicate with our parents through telephone for one long year. We are supposed to write only one letter per month. So it was, for me, it was the most painful thing. I can't imagine how can I spend one long year without talking to my parents. But God again gave me grace to connect with them through letters. I was able to come out successfully from novitiate. I wanted more clarity to know my call to priesthood. So I started consulting many priests regarding my vocation. I mainly consulted the Vincentian priest, Father Joseph Etiankle, and everyone prayed along with me and helped me to discern my vocation. They said me one thing: if you want to be holy and want to live a good life of a priest, faithful to priesthood, then you become a priest. Otherwise, you can't continue as what you are. And Jesus never forces anyone to be a priest. If you want, you follow the path of Christ. Then I decided I will become a priest. In the year 2022, on Jan 19, I got ordained as a priest. At present, I'm doing my service at Logos Retreat Center, Bangalore. From the very next day of my ordination, I got an opportunity to conduct everyday Eucharistic adoration, preaching, as well as Holy Mass. When I received this call, I said to God, I will never preach. But from the day one of my priesthood, I started preaching. Now I understand how much beautiful this preaching is, because many people, when they hear the word of God, their pains, their sadness is being healed. Their sickness is being healed. God does wonders when the word of God has been preached. Now I realize how wonderful is to be a priest. If you are able to be a mouthpiece of Christ, God will do the needful to His children. I enjoy every day being a priest. I listen to confession. I guide youth in their night vigils. I enjoy every day in my journey walk with Christ. I have special concern for the young, especially the youth. I spend a lot of time in counseling them, helping them to take a right decision, right path in their life, as well as in their spiritual journey. I love to catechize them with UCAT, where many of their doubts related to faith aspects are clarified. Thus, they're able to come closer to the church as well as grow deeper in their Catholic faith. Many young people ask me this question, Father, how can I discern my vocation towards priesthood? And my answer would be, you sit in the presence of the Lord in silence. If you want to hear the call of God, silence yourself, sit in the presence of the Lord, allow the God to speak to you. From my childhood, I had a very special devotion towards Mother Mary. The reason is, the high school where I studied was just behind St. Mary's Basilica, Bangalore. Always I feel, though I am away from Christ later days of my college and so on, it is Mother Mary which brings me again and again back to Christ. I can always experience the invisible presence of Mother in my life. How can I define priesthood in my own words? I prayed for a two-wheeler and God gave me a Rolls Royce. I prayed to become a chief executive officer, but God made me a priest. And that is the greatest designation or a post a person can get. As a chief executive officer, I might have signed few checks as salaries for people, but now with these hands I can bless lakhs of people. Thus, I become a blessing in other person's life as a priest.
My life is a miracle. Every child has a story of God's love to share. Shalom world, tune into God's love story.